I was curled up on the sofa, my half-finished cup of tea sitting on the coffee table, when I heard the front door click open. Michael stepped inside, shoulders slouched like the day had wrung him dry. He was wearing a charcoal turtleneck, which instantly caught my attention. Michael never wears turtlenecks, not unless it's freezing, and tonight the air outside was barely cool. I stood up to greet him, smiling, but something about the way he carried himself made my stomach tighten. When I wrapped my arms around him, the hug felt off, brief, almost rehearsed. One of his hands stayed up near his neck, fingers gripping the collar like he was afraid I might tug it down. His cologne drifted toward me, familiar, yes, but sharper, like it had been sprayed on recently. I tried to shake the thought away, telling myself I was imagining things. Then he bent to take off his shoes, and the turtleneck's fabric shifted just enough to reveal it. A faint, curved mark on his skin, a soft pink hue I knew didn't come from me. My eyes darted away before he could notice I'd seen it. My mouth stayed silent, but my mind was already racing, piecing together late nights, vague excuses, and the strange distance that had been creeping between us. I followed him into the kitchen, pretending everything was normal, asking about his day while watching the way he moved. He busied himself with the mail, flipping through envelopes like each one carried life or death news. He didn't look at me much. When he did, his eyes slid away quickly, landing anywhere but on mine. That lipstick mark pulsed in the back of my mind, bright and undeniable, no matter how much I tried to shove it into a corner. I thought about the last few weeks, how often he'd been caught up at work, how his phone always seemed to be face down when he set it on the counter, how he suddenly cared more about what shirt he wore to the office. None of it had set off alarms before, but now every little change felt like a puzzle piece snapping into place. My chest tightened, but I kept my expression calm, soft. He asked if I'd eaten, and I nodded, keeping my voice even. Inside, though, I was cataloging details. His turtleneck, the time he walked in, the smell of his cologne, the mark that didn't belong to me. I didn't want to confront him yet. I needed more than a single, blurry clue. I needed the whole picture. And if I played this right, he'd never see me coming. I let the evening unfold like any other, careful not to give him a reason to suspect I'd noticed anything. We sat in the living room, the TV murmuring in the background, though I couldn't have told you what was playing if my life depended on it. My mind was somewhere else entirely, replaying that split second when the collar shifted and the truth peeked out like it was daring me to act. Michael laughed at something on the screen, but it felt hollow, like the sound belonged to someone else. I caught him glancing at his phone, a quick flick of his eyes, then back again. Whatever conversation he wasn't having with me was clearly more important than the one we weren't having together. I sipped my tea, the now cold liquid bitter on my tongue. The thing is, I've never been the type to explode without thinking. If he was hiding something, and my gut told me he was, I wasn't going to hand him the chance to lie his way out of it. No, I'd wait. I'd watch. I'd collect every piece of the story until there was no space left for him to twist it. He might think he's in control now, but that illusion wouldn't last. Not for long. Later that night, after Michael had gone to shower, I wandered into the bedroom and sat at my vanity. My lipstick collection lined the table like a palette of little truths, every shade I'd ever worn, from soft nudes to deep reds. I scanned each one, twisting the tubes, comparing them in my mind to that mark I'd seen on his skin. None of them matched. The color I'd caught a glimpse of was warmer, brighter, almost playful, and definitely not mine. I felt the weight of the thought settle in my chest. He'd been late getting home the night before, too, brushing it off with a casual, out with colleagues, you know how it is. I remembered nodding, believing him, or maybe just choosing not to ask more. But now that moment came back like a bad photograph, one I couldn't unsee. The sound of running water hummed from the bathroom, giving me cover to move. I walked over to the laundry basket, the scent of his cologne still faint on the pile. There it was, a shirt crumpled near the bottom. I lifted it, and sure enough, a faint lipstick stain curved along the inside of the collar. Same shade, same shape. I pulled my phone from my pocket, snapped a photo, and tucked the shirt back exactly where I found it. This wasn't the time for accusations. This was the time to gather my ammunition. I slipped back to my vanity before Michael turned off the water, my heart thudding but my face calm in the mirror. The trick was keeping my breathing steady, my hands still. If he sensed even a flicker of suspicion, he'd start covering his tracks, more carefully this time. I needed him to believe I was oblivious, the trusting wife who never thought to look twice. When he came out, steam curling around him, he smiled like nothing in the world had shifted. He tossed his damp towel onto the bed, chatted about some minor drama at work, and I nodded in all the right places. But my mind wasn't in the room with him anymore. It was flipping through every late arrival, every vague client dinner, every evening he smelled faintly of perfume that wasn't mine. I'd always thought that betrayal, if it ever happened to me, would hit like a bolt of lightning, shocking, blinding. But this was different. It was quiet, like a crack slowly spreading across glass, the kind that starts small, then grows until the whole thing shatters. And I wasn't about to stand there when it finally broke, not without holding the pieces in my own hands first. That night, as Michael drifted off beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, the faint rhythm of his breathing filling the room. My phone rested on the nightstand, the picture of that stained collar glowing in my mind like a secret I wasn't ready to release. I'd never been so aware of the space between us. Not just the inches on the mattress, but the invisible wall he'd built without me noticing. I thought about how easy it would be to shake him awake, to demand an explanation, to watch him squirm under the weight of the truth. But I knew better. Confrontations without proof were invitations for liars to rewrite the story. And Michael? He was the kind of man who could turn a question into an accusation into my fault. No, I'd play the long game. I'd smile when I needed to, ask the right questions, let him believe he still held the upper hand. All while keeping my eyes open for the one thing that would make denial impossible. Because deep down, I knew, a mark on his skin could be explained away. But the truth, once I had it in my hands, would stain everything he touched. The next morning, I waited until Michael was in the shower before making my move. His phone sat on the nightstand, screen dark, almost daring me to touch it. I picked it up, my fingers steady, my expression calm, in case he stepped out early. Just checking the weather, I'd say, harmless, casual. That was the beauty of it. People rarely question what they don't expect. I unlocked it easily. He'd never bothered to change the passcode. My eyes skimmed through messages until one caught my attention, a chat with someone saved as Mark Work. Harmless enough on the surface, but the words, they didn't sound like any conversation between colleagues. Little jokes, late-night messages, sentences that lingered too long on nothing. Then I found it, a selfie. A woman, pouting just slightly, wearing the exact lipstick shade I'd seen on his collar and shirt. There it was, clear as daylight, staring back at me from his own phone. My stomach sank, but my pulse was steady. I had her face. I had her color. And now I had exactly what I'd been waiting for. I scrolled further, each message peeling away another layer of the man I thought I knew. Compliments slipped between work updates, little hearts sprinkled after goodnight. She'd sent him photos from her office, from her car, from cafes that I now realized explained some of those late meetings. The timestamp on one of them was just hours before he came home wearing that turtleneck. It was strange. The anger I expected didn't come in the way I'd imagined. Instead, it was this cold clarity, like someone had just opened a window in a room I'd been suffocating in without realizing. Every lie, every excuse, every vague detail he'd fed me, it all fit neatly together now, forming a picture that was impossible to misread. I locked the phone and placed it back exactly as I'd found it, my breathing slow, my face neutral. He'd walk out of that shower, towel slung around his shoulders, completely unaware that the game had shifted. He didn't know it yet, but from this moment on, I was the one holding the winning hand. When Michael stepped out of the bathroom, steam rolling in behind him, I was sitting on the edge of the bed scrolling through my own phone like nothing had happened. He smiled, tossed me some casual comment about breakfast, and disappeared into the closet to get dressed. I watched him from the corner of my eye, this man who thought the narrative still belonged to him. Inside, I was already planning, There would be no screaming match, no dramatic scene in public where he could twist my words or play the wounded victim. No, I'd choose the time, the place, and the terms. Somewhere he couldn't hide behind charm or anger. Somewhere I could put every piece of evidence in front of him and watch the truth strip him bare. He hummed while buttoning his shirt, as if life was perfectly ordinary. And I let him. Because the sweetest part of knowing the truth isn't always in saying it right away. It's in carrying it quietly, letting it settle, until the moment it's ready to detonate. That evening, I waited until the house felt still, the kind of quiet where even the hum of the fridge seemed loud. Michael was in the kitchen, pouring himself a drink, when I called his name. My voice was calm, steady, almost warm. I motioned for him to sit at the dining table. He did, eyebrows pinched in mild confusion, glass still in hand. I placed my phone on the table and began sliding the photos across the surface. The stained shirt, the close-up of the mark on his skin, the screenshot of her selfie in that unmistakable lipstick. His face drained, just a fraction, but enough for me to catch it. For a heartbeat, there was nothing but silence between us, heavy and unbroken. Then came the words I'd been expecting, the stammered attempts at explanation that tripped over themselves, morphing quickly into blame. "You've been distant," he said. "You've stopped taking care of yourself. If you'd been there for me." His voice grew louder, angrier, trying to make me the problem so he didn't have to face his own reflection. But I wasn't there to play the role he'd written for me. I didn't flinch. I didn't even raise my voice. I just let him talk, every excuse another thread unraveling the image of the man he wanted me to believe he was. When he finally paused, waiting for me to defend myself or to cry, I leaned forward, my gaze steady. "You didn't need someone else," I said quietly. "You chose someone else, and now I'm choosing myself." The words hung there between us, heavier than any shout could have been. For a second, I thought I saw something flicker in his eyes. Not guilt, but the realization that he had no more power here. He opened his mouth again, probably to bargain or threaten, but I didn't give him the chance. I stood, my chair scraping softly against the floor, and reached for the overnight bag I'd packed days ago. Every item inside had been chosen with purpose, proof that this wasn't a rash decision. I slung the strap over my shoulder, feeling lighter already. He was still talking as I walked toward the door, his voice growing smaller with every step. I didn't slam the door. I didn't need to. The quiet click behind me felt louder than any argument we'd ever had. The night air was cool against my skin, carrying the scent of rain somewhere in the distance. My car was parked at the curb, just where I'd left it, and as I slid into the driver's seat, a strange calm settled over me. Inside that house, Michael was probably pacing, rehearsing the story he'd tell himself to make me the villain. But out here, the air tasted different, cleaner, like freedom had a scent I'd never noticed before. I started the engine, my headlights cutting through the dark street ahead. I didn't look back. Not at the house, not at the window where I half expected to see him standing. Whatever life we'd built there was over, and I had no intention of salvaging the rubble. This was no longer about catching him in a lie. It was about writing the ending on my own terms. And I was just getting started. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the thin curtains of my new apartment, warm and unfamiliar. I'd signed the lease weeks ago, just in case. It was small, but every inch of it was mine. No shadows of him in the corners, no lingering scent of his cologne clinging to the air. My boxes sat neatly stacked by the wall, and for the first time in years I didn't feel rushed to unpack. Over coffee, my phone buzzed with a flurry of notifications. A mutual friend had sent me a link to some office gossip. Apparently, the lipstick-wearing colleague had made herself known in ways even Michael couldn't control. Whispers of their affair had threaded through his workplace, moving from break rooms to boardrooms, until his carefully maintained image had started to crack. I didn't gloat, not out loud. But there was a quiet satisfaction in knowing the truth had a way of seeping out, no matter how carefully it's hidden. The same way that lipstick had marked him, invisible to most, until the light caught it just right. Later that afternoon, I walked past a boutique I'd never noticed before, its window display glowing with rows of lipsticks in every shade imaginable. One in particular stopped me, that exact warm, bright color I'd seen on his skin. For a moment, I just stood there, staring at it, the memory flashing in my mind like the final frame of a film. Then I walked inside. The sales clerk swiped the shade across the back of my hand, and I couldn't help but smile. It wasn't about him anymore. This color wasn't his secret to hide, his mistake to explain away. It was mine now, a small piece of closure in a tube of pigment. I bought it without hesitation, slipping it into my bag like a trophy I hadn't planned on winning. Back home, I twisted the cap, applied it slowly, and watched my reflection shift. It was amazing how something so small could feel like taking back a piece of yourself. A reminder that I'd been marked once, but now, I chose what marks I carried. That evening, I found myself on the rooftop bar a few blocks from my new place, the city lights glittering like scattered jewels beneath the night sky. A glass of deep red wine rested in my hand, the lipstick on its rim bold and unapologetic. The air was warmer up here, the kind that carried laughter and music from somewhere far below, and for the first time in a long while, I felt completely untethered. I took out my phone and angled it just right, the skyline in the background, the wine glass in the foreground, my new lipstick glowing under the string lights. The caption came to me instantly, sharp and deliberate. Some colors aren't meant to be hidden. I hit post without overthinking it. As the notification pinged, I leaned back in my chair, savoring the moment. The truth was, this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclamation. Of my time, my voice, my future. The stain that once felt like a wound had become a signature. And this time, it was mine to wear proudly.